This is a night where anyone can share anything musical, any story related, any poems, anything that you fancy. And what else do I need to say? My name is Justine. I'm a storyteller and your host. Um, and we'll probably just go around in the order that people arrive. If you want to share or tell a tale or a tune or a poem or just your philosophical musings, I guess, about anything else. I will remember at some point to put my PayPal in the chat if you'd like to donate towards me, my storytelling, my childcare. That's the big thing. Generally keeping my children fed, that would be great. But we do always start with an extreme story, which is when I make up a story purely from suggestions. And since the two people we have here in person are the Keiths, can I refer to you mutually as the Keith? Is that all right? Then it will be from your suggestions tonight, if you're both all right with that. Does that sound okay? Lovely. Okay, then we will kick off with our extreme story. So how extreme stories work, if you remember, is that if you give me, first of all, who you would like the story to be about, who or what is going to be the hero of our story. You can shout it out, put it in the chat. What do you think?
You mentioned dinosaurs. Can you do a dinosaur story?
I could absolutely do a dinosaur story. The question is, Keith, which dinosaur would you like? Oh. What's your favorite dinosaur? Either Keith, which one's your favorite dinosaur?
Tyrannosaurus Rex, I think.
Tyrannosaurus Rex, lovely.
Big loud one.
The classic. Okay, so the next thing we need to decide is what Mr. T-Rex wants more than anything in the world. What's going to be the purpose of his journey in this story? What does he want?
Friends.
Friends.
He's so big and scary, he's got no friends.
Oh, bless. So T-Rex wants some friends. How cute. And the next thing that I need to ask you is who or what is going to try and stop our T-Rex getting some friends? Seems mean, but somebody has to be the baddie in this story. Who would you like it to be? Decisions.
Well, it just could be just the devil.
The devil.
Devil.
The devil. We're going to have a classic.
The evil one.
The evil one.
Yes.
Oh, it could be the big bad evil dinosaur, couldn't it? Maybe we shouldn't name him. The dinosaur who shall not be named. Should we just steal that? Cool. So we have maybe devil dinosaur. That's quite nice. That has an alliteration to it. The devil dinosaur. Lovely. Okay. So I'm going to start, and as I go along, I'm going to ask for suggestions. Just shout them out, stick them in the chat. I'm going to see if I've got the live stream online so I can see if anyone makes suggestions online. Let's have a look. I don't know if it's up yet. Okay. If you do make, oh no, there we go. If you do make suggestions online, then I should be able to see them, I think. Hold on 1 second, because I don't want you to miss out on the opportunity. If you can, hold on. Just keeping that anticipation. Oh, I don't know if it's online. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just add them in next time. Let's see. Oh, no, it's good. I've got it. I've got the live feed now. So if you are watching on Facebook, you can also suggest in there, and I will try and keep the track on everything at the same time. All right. So once upon a time, a very, very long time ago, even longer than most stories take place, there was a dinosaur. He was a T-Rex. We're going to call him Mr. T, the T-Rex. And he, like most T-Rexes, was quite a loner, because he just kind of spent all his time kind of going at people. In fact, Keith, I definitely need a roar from you. Ready? 1, 2, 3. So you guys have got a roar as well. It doesn't work if I just do it. Good. See, silent roars is fine. Lovely. And the problem with that was that a lot of people, that was the only way he could communicate. So when he went up to people and go, then people would just run away. Well, not people, other dinosaurs. Yeah, like the Velociraptors would run away, the Triceratops would run away, the Apatosaurus, my favorite, the Maiasaurus, like the mother dinosaur, she would run away. And so that poor T-Rex, he thought, I'm going to need to find another way to make friends, because my only way of communicating is going, and they always think I want to eat them rather than be friends with them. So the T-Rex needed to do something about his roar. Now, if you were a T-Rex and currently your only method of communicating frightened people away, what would you try first? Who would you ask for help? Where would you go? What do we think? Where should we take our T-Rex first on his search for friends?
Diplodocus, because
Diplodocus.
Diplodocus is big and there has got a big, quiet voice.
Exactly. So that's exactly what Mr. T, the T-Rex, did. He walked along with his little arms like this and his big feet until he found Diplodocus. And Diplodocus was just by one of those big lakes, and he was dipping like his long neck down and having a nice drink. And T-Rex said, "Rah!" Diplodocus wasn't frightened because obviously Diplodocus is a lot bigger than T-Rex, probably in a different time period for all I know. See, that's the one thing I don't know about dinosaurs. Anyway, I digress. So T-Rex looked up at Diplodocus and he said in his roaring sound, which Diplodocus understood, he said, Diplodocus, I have this trouble. You see, I am very roary, and every time I roar, anyone I'm trying to make friends with just runs away. And you, Diplodocus, you seem to have a lot of friends, like you've got your whole Diplodocus family around you. What do you suggest I do so that I can make some friends? Because I'm just not doing anything here. So the Diplodocus thought, and he stroked his stinky beard, because that's how everyone thinks in my stories. And he said, what you need to do is you need to go and find, now, what was it that Diplodocus said the T-Rex needed to find? What was he going to need to find to help in his journey? It can be sensible. It can be silly. I'm just seeing if any of the Facebook people have got clues. No, you're on your own, Keith. What do you think Diplodocus told him he needed?
He needs to learn more. Well, I'm saying communication's not roaring.
Diplodocus said the thing you need to find is some way of communicating that isn't using your roary voice, because it is quite scary. So T-Rex said, okay, so who do we know that communicates like super quietly? And Diplodocus said, well, I do, but to be honest, nobody really hears me up here. It's only the other like Diplodocuses. So you need to find maybe, I don't know, a bird or a fish, because they like kind of just make little noises. Maybe they can teach you to make a little noise. So he carried on across the plain and he went through the jungles until finally he got to the beach. And in the beach, you could see right in the distance was a plesiosaur. Now, plesiosaurs are also pretty scary. But near the plesiosaur were the ichthyosaurs, which are kind of a bit like dolphins. And everyone loves dolphins, right? Because they're super cute. So he called out to the ichthyosaurs who were making dolphin noises. I don't know if this is true, but then no one knows what noises dinosaurs make. So the ichthyosaurs were doing their dolphin noise, which is kind of like a click thing, isn't it? And T-Rex went up to the, like as close as he could to the edge of the shore. And he said to the ichthyosaurs, he said, ichthyosaurs, how do you make that little clicking noise? Because everyone thinks that's really sweet. And when in many, many years' time you develop into dolphins, everyone's just going to think you're the best animals in the world. So the ichthyosaur said, which means I have special teeth for it. And the problem is with you, T-Rex, that you don't actually have the kind of teeth for it. You're going to have to find another way of communicating that isn't sound at all. T-Rex said, but I don't know where to go to find that. So I can't make quiet noises because my mouth isn't made for it. What am I going to find to communicate that and doesn't actually involve sound at all? So where do you think the ichthyosaur, you know, we can say a word and you forget to say it. Where do you think the ichthyosaur sent him next? To find a way to communicate that doesn't involve sound.
You have to use sign language of some kind.
Maybe I have to use sign language. So he went further along and he found in the bottom of a cave, like a little bit kind of away from the shore, there was the first human. The first human didn't have like language either. And the first human was sitting in the bottom of a cave. I don't know what happened to the rest. Maybe he didn't evolve to anyone else. And so T-Rex went up to the first human. And even though looking at someone that little, it did make the T-Rex a little bit hungry, he was like, no, I'm going to resist eating. And I'm going to ask in my quietest roar, do you know how to communicate with signs? And the first human did the strangest thing. He got up and he began to dance. And as the T-Rex watched the dancing, he realized that he might not be able to do signs because he had such tiny hands, he could barely put them together. But what he could do was dance. So he said to the human, can you teach me to do that? And the human, like in his kind of dancey way, said yes. I don't know how you say yes and dance. Maybe like this. There we go. So the human danced yes. And the T-Rex and the human went out onto the beach. And the human was just about to teach the T-Rex how to dance so beautifully that he could communicate and make friends with anybody around him, when between them jumped out the devil dinosaur. The devil dinosaur had horns and he had hooves. He looked pretty much like a devil does now, but a dinosaur version. And the devil dinosaur said, no, you, T-Rex, are destined to be the bad dinosaur for all time. We will never forget that you are the bad dinosaur. And that means that you cannot learn to communicate and you cannot make friends. And the T-Rex said, but can't just one T-Rex be good? The devil dinosaur said, no, I am in charge of badness and you are bad. So the T-Rex and the human, they sat down together and they thought, this won't work. T-Rex, this Mr. T, this T-Rex really wants to make friends. How are we going to convince this devil dinosaur? Or how are we going to overcome this devil dinosaur? They knew because it was a story, they definitely only had 3 chances. So the human and the T-Rex sat together and they thought really hard. They stroked their thinky beards. And what do you think was the first thing that they came up with to try to get past this rule that the devil dinosaur had made? What should we try first? What do you think? We could tempt him. We could trick
Help
him.
someone.
Help someone. So if we could help, so if we offered the devil dinosaur some help, maybe he'd kind of like relax the rule.
I mean, helping someone would bypass that because it would make them like him.
Ah, okay. So he said, well, maybe if like I can't use the dance thing, maybe I could just help someone and that like make them like me. But the problem was that as soon as the T-Rex went up to somebody and said, can I help you? It just sounded like a massive roar and they ran away. He knew that the only way that he was going to be able to make friends was making the devil dinosaur let him learn to dance. Well, the human then had an idea. The human thought about it very hard. What do we think the human suggested? What do we reckon? How are we going to convince the devil dinosaur to let the T-Rex dance? That's such a great sentence. I might say that again. How are we going to convince the devil dinosaur to let the T-Rex dance?
The human could tell the devil that the T-Rex was a better dancer and he'd seen him dance.
I think it might be time for a competition with the devil, the first one. So the human knew that the devil liked competitions. As we humans know to this day, the devil does love to have a competition. So the devil dinosaur, the human said to the devil dinosaur, how about we make a deal? If you dance and the T-Rex dances and you are the better dancer and you can dance for longer, then we will agree that the T-Rex can never learn to dance and will never be able to make friends and will be forevermore known as the bad dinosaur. But however, if the T-Rex dances better and longer than you, then you have to allow him to dance with people so that he can make friends. Well, the devil does like a deal, as we know. So the devil dinosaur agreed. And so the first ever competition that the devil took part in happened. The human found some sticks and started banging out a beat on the cave. And then the human shouted instructions to the T-Rex and told him how to move. And the T-Rex began to move so beautifully, nothing you've ever seen. And then the devil began to move like beautifully as well, and so intricately. And those 2 dinosaurs, the devil dinosaur and the T-Rex dinosaur, they danced and they danced and they danced and they danced until no one knew. All the other dinosaurs were around them watching to see what would happen at the end of the competition. And the sun set and they danced through the night, and the sun rose and they danced through the day. And they kept going and they kept going. Well, I'm going to end this story the way I think it should. The devil dinosaur got so frustrated that he danced so fast and faster and faster and faster until he exhausted himself and collapsed. But the T-Rex, well, he didn't just dance fast and hard, he danced slow and beautiful. And so even after the devil dinosaur had collapsed in the sand, he carried on dancing. And all the dinosaurs that had gathered to see this competition realized that the T-Rex was dancing so beautifully that they wanted to be friends with him. The devil, when he came to, had to agree that the T-Rex had in fact been the better dancer. And so that T-Rex managed to make friends with all of the dinosaurs around him. And while he lived happily ever after, not all the T-Rexes won their competition with the devil dinosaur. And that's why to this day, we still know the T-Rex as a slightly aggressive and angry dinosaur. The end. That was fun. I'm going to tell that again. Thank you, Keith, for your suggestion. It's nearly Die November. A couple of months, you see. That's a great Die November story. I just
Yeah,
love this image.
I might do that myself if that's okay.
Oh,
I
yeah.
jotted down I like the dancing competition.
I think the idea of a devil dinosaur and a T-Rex dinosaur dancing, like, and just one, like, because the devil always kind of goes really fast and fiery, doesn't he? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's our story now. We're going to share it with anyone. All right, so that's quite enough for me, as enjoyable as that was. Keith from Wolverhampton, you were first. Would you like to share a tale with us?
Yes, I would. I
Oh, we'll
would,
just
and I'd like us
let
to
Norman
go.
in. We're just going to
Norman
let
from
Norman in first.
Canada.
There we go.
Yeah, we'll let Norman in.
Let Norman in. Don't want to miss the start. There we go. Hi, Norman. Right.
Hi, Norman.
Keith, you're about to start, so I'll pop you on spotlight. Oh, if that depends whether I can. Waleed, have you made me host? Oh, maybe I can. Let's have a look. Are you spotlighted now? I don't know.
I don't mind not being spotlighted. It's
hang on. Well, you might not be. We'll see. We'll work it out.
see.
Off you go, Keith.
Off I go. Off I go. Off to Egypt.
Yay.
To Egypt. Back in time where a king lived in a fantastic palace. Marble and gold and jewels covered every wall. But his pride and joy was his atrium. His atrium, a great courtyard in the middle of the palace, and it was bedecked with exotic bushes and trees. There was a huge eucalyptus tree in the middle. There was a pond in which swam huge carp and goldfish, and birds from all over the world sat in the branches and sang. And the king would go and sit in there and look around and enjoy the sounds and sights of his atrium. And he was always adding to it. Anything he came across. And if ambassadors arrived from other countries, they would bring him presents. And it wasn't easy to bring him a present because all he wanted was an exotic plant or a fish or a bird or an animal to bedeck his atrium. And so it was that one day he was out riding with his entourage, and they passed a wood, and on the edge of the wood there was a field, and in the field there was a tree, and halfway up the tree, sitting on a branch, was an iguana. And the king stopped everyone and rode forward on his own and looked up the tree. And there was the iguana, which looked down at him and then carried on resting on the branch, which is more or less all the iguana did, apart from shooting out his tongue and eating tiny creatures. The king told his men, I must have that iguana. It must live in my atrium so I can sit and I can enjoy it. And his men sent out a proclamation. Anyone who can capture the iguana from that tree will receive a bag of gold. So people came. First of all, the strong, the muscly, those who could lift huge weights. And they grabbed hold of the tree and they shook it. And the tree shook and shook and shook, and the iguana hung on tight and looked down at them condescendingly in a look that said, I am not falling off this branch. And eventually they tired and they gave up. And people from the neighboring towns and villages began to watch this spectacle. And the king, thinking that no one will ever dislodge the iguana, upped the ante and said, anyone getting that iguana for me will get a bag of gold and can marry my daughter. A gasp went up. marry his daughter. And then warriors came, warriors, athletes, and they tried to climb up the tree to grab the iguana. But as they climbed up the tree, the iguana climbed up higher and looked down on them disdainfully. And when they departed defeated, he went back to his branch, his favorite branch, and sat there. And finally, the clever people came. The clever people, and the people, the huge crowd that had gathered to enjoy this spectacle, they liked this. For the clever people stood at the bottom of the tree and they tried to flatter the iguana and say, "Oh, your wonderful colours, and that face, and those wonderful eyes, and that tongue that shoots out so far." And the iguana looked down from the tree disdainfully with a look that said, "Flattery gets you nowhere." And everyone cheered and clapped, and the iguana had become a hero to the people who lived nearby. And one day they were all standing around wondering what next would come, when a small boy in peasant's clothes arrived in the clearing. And he had with him a big bag on his shoulder, and on 2 pieces of string he had a goat and a dog. And the people watched and they laughed and they sneered, and someone even made up a song about him, a comic song, mocking him. How could that boy get that iguana down, win the bag of gold and the princess's hand in marriage? And it was great sport. But the boy took no notice. Quietly, he collected some sticks. And out of the bag, he took a pot. And out of the bag, he took some oats and a bottle that was poured some water in. And he set fire to the sticks. And as the pot bubbled away, making its porridge, he went off to the edge of the clearing and he collected a huge armful of sweet grass. And when both were ready, he took the sweet grass over to the dog to feed it. And the dog turned its head away. Grass. It already smelt the porridge. And he put it down in front of the dog, and the dog ignored it. And he went back over, got a wooden bowl and a ladle, and he filled it with porridge. And he went over to the goat. And the goat looked at the porridge and pulled a face and turned its head away at the grass in front of the dog. And the boy went back and forth, offering the dog the grass, offering the goat the porridge, apparently with no success, until eventually the iguana shouted down from the tree. "What do you think you're doing?" said the iguana. "You give the goat the grass and the dog the porridge." And the boy put on a foolish face and said, "What? You give the goat the grass, the dog the porridge? Sorry." He sighed a third time. The iguana said, "You give the goat the grass and the dog the porridge." "What? Oh," said the iguana, and came scaling down the tree, marched over to the boy, grabbed the grass, took it to the goat, grabbed the porridge and gave it to the dog and said, "There, that's the way around." And before he could say another word, the boy grabbed the iguana and popped him in his bag and pulled it tight and threw it over his shoulder and head for the palace. And when he arrived at the door of the palace, the guard, seeing this boy in peasant's clothes, said, "You can't come here, you scruffy little boy, off you go." He said, "Oh, in my bag, I've got the iguana that the king covets." Now the guard knew all about that and opened the gate immediately, and he was taken forward into the atrium where the king sat looking at all this splendor. And the boy opened the bag, and the iguana got out, stared around, ran through the pond, frightened the fish, grabbed the tree, ran up the tree, frightened the birds, and found a nice big branch up the eucalyptus tree and sat down, and his tongue flew out and grabbed a small beast. And the iguana thought to himself, well, one tree's same as another, really. This is okay. And looked around. This is very nice. And the king sent for the bag of gold. But then he looked at the boy and thought, he's dressed in peasant clothes. He can't go in front of my daughter looking like that. And so his stewards took him away. And they put him in a bath and washed him. And they gave him nice clothes with jewels and fabrics. And then he took him back to the atrium, and the princess was brought out, and the king left them together, slightly embarrassed about the offer he had made, but the whole country knew about it. And the princess sat down quite calmly, because as a princess, she didn't expect to choose her own husband. That was not how it was in those days. And she was quite comfortable. He looked like quite a nice boy. But the boy said to her, Princess, I've got my fine clothes now. I've got my bag of gold. He said, you don't have to marry me. It's okay. And she said, well, hang on. Maybe I would like to marry you after all. Let's get to know each other. And that's what they did. They walked in the palace grounds, not just the atrium, but in all those fields and lakes that surround a palace. And she talked about her life, which actually was much more limited than him, because she just lived in a palace where he played in the woods and ran up trees and played with his friends and was quite a laugh. So you've already guessed that the boy and the princess married, and they lived happily ever after. Thank you.
Yay! That was great. Thank you, Keith, so much. Oh, I enjoyed that. I feel like we're proper in Lizard World. We've gone dinosaurs to iguanas. We're going reptiles tonight. So we're going to go around in order of people arriving, if that's all right. Hi, Norman, and hi, David. Good to see you. So next up, we have the next Keith in Lincolnshire. Let me put a spotlight on you.
I don't like being spotlight. Just a minute. I'll
That's right. You can turn it off.
I'll change it to Gallery. Right. Right.
Are we staying with reptiles, Keith? That's what I want to know. Are we moving on?
No, this is completely different, really. I'm going to reptile. Well, actually, Keith, it's very well told. It's gone. But that's very well told. I actually tell that story as well. So it was interesting the way that he told it, and he sort of embroidered it more than I do. So it's very good. Excellent.
It's nice to hear other people telling the stories you tell, isn't it? Because sometimes you hear things that you don't normally hear. So.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. Really good.
Nice.
Okay.
Lovely. Second, Keith. Off you go.
Well, it was a long time ago in a land far away. There was a storyteller who was the son of a carpenter that lived in Nazareth. And this storyteller, one day, he told a story about a farmer. Now, in those days, there was no field hedges and barriers. There was just open ground, which was churned up and ploughed, really, sort of broken up before they actually spread the corn. And so this farmer, he went out and he broadcast the corn and throwing it all over the field, but some of the seed fell upon a path, and the birds came along and gobbled up the corn, and so it didn't grow. Now, some of the seed, it fell upon rocky ground, and there's no depths of soil really. And when the sun came out and it got hot, although the seed germinated, it shriveled up and died because of no moisture. And then some of the seed fell upon ground which was full of weeds and thistles and thorns. And the seed germinated and grew, but was choked by all the weeds. But some seed fell upon good soil and grew and produced 100 more seeds than what was sown. The storyteller says to everyone, if you have ears, then pay attention. Well, the storyteller's friends said to him, what's the meaning of that story about the farmer? And the storyteller says, well, the secrets of the kingdom of God are given to you. But I tell these stories, and people listen but do not hear. They see but do not understand. The seed that's sown is the message of the kingdom of God, that people can enter into the kingdom and live forever. And so when the seed that was fell on the path are people that hear the story, but don't want to take it any further, just enjoy the story. And these are people that just don't go very far with the kingdom, and the devil whisks them away. Now, the seed that falls on rocky ground are people that hear the word, hear the message of the kingdom, and but then when the going gets tough and it gets hard, they don't continue on. And this is true even today, when it's more and more difficult if you're a follower of the way. And the seed that falls upon the ground that's full of weeds and thistles are people that they hear the word, they hear the message of the kingdom, and they're excited by it, but the cares of this world and just wanting riches and wanted just pleasure just don't continue on with the word. It's just choked up. The message is choked up. But the seed that falls upon good ground are people that hear the word and it germinates, and they grow and grow and grow, and they share that message of the kingdom with lots of other people. And so there's lots and lots of people, then 100-fold more that enter the kingdom. Now, you probably know that as the parable of the sower, but I've told it as the story of the farmer, as told by the storyteller who lived in Nazareth a long time ago.
Yay! I don't think I've heard that one since I was in primary school. It's like, sometimes you kind of forget what good stories they are. Thank you so much, Keith. That's awesome.
Okay.
I'm going to remove your spotlight. Lovely. I think Norman was in next. Hey, Norman. How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Good. Good to see you.
I have a story in mind that is just a little short,
Okay.
but it's radically different from the previous.
I love it. Let's have some contrast here.
Once
You're
there
ready
was
then.
a woman in an eastern land who was married to a merchant. And the merchant was attentive enough, but business was so good, and he was such a hard worker that, guess what? He paid more attention to his business than he did to his young and very healthy wife. And as young and very healthy wives have done since the beginning of this kind of story being told, she took herself a lover. and they did their best to conceal. But in a small town where the movement of every single bird um, going out to look for seeds and stuff like that, this well, they knew what was going on, and word got around. And so the husband got suspicious, but he had no proof because his wife and her lover, who happened to be a seller and of donkeys, said were very, very, very discreet. So he decided he needed proof, and the proof was the a thing called the rope of truth. Now, at the top of the hill, God had provided a rope that hung from heaven. And because it hung from heaven, it was directly attached to the truth. Don't ask me how. They knew how to do things like that in those days. So, and anybody who went up, grasped hold of that rope and told a lie, they would be incinerated on the spot. So the rope of truth was feared by all. And very few people went up there, but unless, of course, they absolutely knew they were telling the truth. So the husband said to his wife, we are going tomorrow. We are going up the hill. We are going to the rope of truth. You will tell me the truth when you hold that rope, and we shall see what we shall see. And his wife said, very well, dear. And she ate a date. Because you see, she already had a plan. Before he had finished speaking, she had a plan. So she may have been young, she may have been beautiful, but she was also very clever. So when her husband went away to do his accounts and his papers and attend to his business, etc., she was going about her business, which was she went into the town. She went to the young man saying, we have need of a donkey, and my husband will come and get the donkey tomorrow, and you are to offer the best price and make sure that he is the one who rents your donkey that I will be riding up the hill. And the fellow nodded, we'll do that. And the conversation was unnoticed, so she went away back to her husband and said, husband, I've made arrangements for us to go up the hill of truth. Now, it's a long ways, and my foot was hurt, and so we need a donkey to go up the hill. Very well, said her husband. We will get a donkey. And so the next morning, bright and early, husband got up, the young wife got up, and the husband went down, and he was a very good businessman, and he always took the best price available. And lo and behold, there was one donkey, a fine-looking animal that was being rented for a very, very good price. And of course, the handsome young man handed over the rope with the donkey on the other end, and the husband with his donkey. Now, the gentleman of the owner of the donkey was also leading the donkey along. And so the woman was sitting on the back of the donkey with a bag of dates in her lap, and she was eating away. And every so often she would glance at the handsome young donkey keeper. And if the husband noticed, well, he thought it was quite normal for a handsome young man to be attractive to a beautiful young woman, and he was proud of his wife for that he had such a beautiful wife. And in fact, this is how most men make donkeys of themselves, full of pride. So while they were going along, the woman was waiting for her chance, and suddenly at her signal, the donkey stumbled. She fell off the donkey, and her dress went flying up the air, and the wind blew her dress up, showing all of the joy, all the attributes that God had given to her for the entire world to see. She said, oh, how this the shame of this, that this young donkey keeper would see what only my husband should see. And she pulled her dress down. But the husband laughed a little bit, but he was slightly embarrassed. The donkey owner and keeper said nothing. But they went their way up, and finally at the top of the hill, and there was the rope of truth. Very simple rope, a very ordinary rope, a rope of which it was death to touch and tell a lie. But the young woman got off the donkey, walked over to the rope of truth, grasped it firmly, and in the eyes of her husband and the donkey owner, she cried out, "I swear to all who behold me that nobody has ever seen me naked except for my husband and the owner of this donkey." And nothing happened. Husband said, "Could you repeat that, please?" "Yes, I swear that only you and this young man has ever seen me naked." And nothing happened. And so the husband was convinced that all the rumors were false, and the young woman got back up on the donkey, and she was led down the hill on the back of the donkey, still eating the sweet dates and smiling. And that is why there is no longer a rope of truth, because God realized that even God cannot prevail against the wiles and the wits of a young woman.
Thank you very much, Norman. That's lovely. Where does that one come from? I've not heard that before.
I've lost the source of it, but it's from the Middle East.
Oh, it's like, yeah, it has that kind of, it has that flavor to it, doesn't it? Like brain's got like a Nasruddin kind of like sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it'd be
Yeah.
a Nasruddin story.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are ways of telling it in which you get more detail.
Yeah.
But, I'm not too
That's
sure who'll be watching this, so
No, that's entirely fine.
yes.
All
And
right.
David looks to be an innocent type, so I just wanted to spare his ears.
I think that's fair. I'm not sure David's an innocent type. David? David, you said you had a Texas story for us.
Yes. Hey, everybody. I finally got on.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank
so
you, Mike.
pleased you made it.
Thank you, Mike, for sending me the Zoom link. For some reason, I
Yay.
can't go through World Storytelling Cafe.
Yeah.
My system doesn't like whatever. I have no idea. This is a tale from Texas.
Yeah.
I have been, I am considered the storyteller in residence for the Bastrop Historical Commission. And when we had the National Day of the Cowboy, I came up with different stories that were like the Jewish cowboys, the American Indian cowboys, the black cowboys, the cattle queens, the vaqueros, who are the original cowboys. They're from Mexico. So this is a story about two vaqueros. They're the compadres. They're best of friends. This story is El Gran Toro Negro, the great black bull. I tell you, my friends, for my friends you are. Felipe Montoya and Jose Sanchez. Oh, they were the best vaqueros. They worked for El Jefe de Ranchero, the chief of the ranch. And he liked them very much, for they taught everyone how to use their lasso. They taught them how to ground up the cattle. They even showed them how to help a heifer when she was having a trouble giving birth. So they rose in the ranks. And the Jefe de Ranchero, he liked them very much. And he had heard, the Jefe had heard, a story from the Tonkawa Indians about the Gran Toro Negro, the great black bull, that if anyone who has that and brings it into his herd, he would have the best cattle around. He would be El Jefe de cattle. So the Jefe, he said, hey, Jose, Felipe, aquí. So they came up and said, what do you want? He says, the great black bull, El Gran Toro Negro. I want you to go get him and bring him to my herd. And you will have the best of everything if you could do that. And we will have the best cattle all around. Jose and Felipe, being compadres, I said, sí, no problema. So they set out because they had heard that the Gran Toro Negro, the great black bull, was over there. Donde? I don't know, but over there. So they went and they sat down and they waited. Now, as we all know, animals can smell humans. So how are they going to make certain that the Gran Toro Negro could not smell them? Felipe, he had a plan. He says, you see all that mierda over there? You mean the cow flap? Yes, all that mierda. We take it and we rub it all over our bodies. So that way, the Toro Negro cannot smell us. Por todo tu cuerpo? Sí, all over your body. Oh, incluso mi cabello? Sí, even your hair. So Felipe and Jose, they stripped down. They took the fresh mierda and they rubbed it all over their bodies, into their hair. And oh, my goodness gracious. Oh, they sat and they waited. And Jose turned and he said, Felipe, asbestos, will you stink too? And they sat and they waited. And soon they kept further and further apart from each other because they could smell themselves. They didn't want to smell each other. And it dried upon them. And el noche, the night, it came down. And they waited. Well, Jose, he was getting bored. He began to sing, la, la, la. And Felipe said, shh, quiete, quiet. Mira, look over there. And there, on the horizon, they saw El Gran Toro Negro. And the novillas, the heifers down in the valley. Oh, they knew something special was going to happen. But Felipe and Jose, they had to catch the bull first. So, mira, quiete. So they took out their lassos. And the Gran Toro Negro started coming down the hill to go to the novillas. And they were, ay, Gariba! They threw their lassos and they grabbed the bull. The only problem is they slipped flat right down into fresh mierda. Then they get sticky on the rope with everywhere and they couldn't do anything. And the Gran Toro went off. Ay, más problema, big problem. What do we tell the jefe? Will we tell the jefe the truth, verdad? Sí. So, Jose and Felipe picked up their clothes, picked up their boots, and they walked back to the rancheros. Well, when they got to the rancheros, their esposas, their wives came out on those porch of their houses and went, asbestos, ¿qué putada? Estúpido marito. In there, meterse in the tina. Get in that water right now. So they got into the water, and the esposas, their wives, brought out a great scrub brush. Ay, que tanto puedo duele. I know it hurts. Shut up. Bonk on their head. Ay, how puedo eran. No es importante. Whap on their culo. Estúpido, oh my Dios mío. Santa Maria. And they washed all the mierda off their husbands. The only problema was the odor had sunk into their skin. Oh, the esposas, their wives said, no, you no can entrar la casa. You sleep out here on the porch. Now. Estúpida Maria de Santa Maria. And they walked in. And they brought out, each one of them, a bowl of beans. It says, here, Here is your comida. Here is your food. At least when I smell something, I know it's you. And that, my friends, is the story of El Gran Toro Negro and Fray Jose and Felipe.
That was great. Thank you, David. You do the best bull impression I've ever heard.
That's what I've been told.
Like when it properly sounds like they sound. That's an art. I love it. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Shall we go around again? Keith, first, Keith, do you have another tale? Awesome. Right. Let me put you on spotlight so we can see you. There we go. Okay, back to Keith number 1. I only call you that in the order you arrived, not like order of importance.
To Egypt. Back in distant times, but not the times of Ramesses and Nefertiti, but to a small town, village probably, just north of Cairo, called Qom Hamat. And Qom Hamat has a square, and on one side of the square is a wooden bench, and on the other, a row of shops, and similar to shops that we have now, but not in closed doors, but the trays of food would be laid out beautifully outside in their colours, and the fish and the meat and any wares they sold. And the shopkeepers were beginning to open their stores. It is first thing in the morning, and it's getting hot. And a figure is sitting on the bench, a figure in a long black robe with a hood. And a woman is walking into the square, a woman, shall we say, of mature years. And she sees the figure there on this hot day in a black cloak with a hood. And as she reaches the figure looks up and she sees those red eyes of Iblis. And Iblis in Egypt is the devil. And she sees the expression on the devil's face. It's one of frustration and anger. And she speaks, being confident of mature years, that she can speak to the devil in an ironic tone, saying, Iblis, Iblis, why do you look frustrated? Why do you look angry? You who are king of the underworld and control all you see. And there is a pause. And then Iblis turns to her and in gritted teeth says, in this place, I have caused disruption. I have set husbands against wives, children against their parents, brothers against sisters, sisters against brothers, cousins and aunties argue and bicker. Cats and dogs hiss and growl at their owners, apart from one person. And he pointed across the square. And there, a seller of fabrics was hanging fabrics on the rail and whistling to himself and smiling, for he had just come from home. He had just got up in the morning and had breakfast with his lovely wife, and he was the happiest man in the world, and nothing could change that. And the woman looked on amused as he hung these lovely fabrics over the rails and whistled. And Iblis grumbled and snarled. I'm shocked, said the woman. I could part that man from his wife in an instant. And Iblis snorted and turned away from her. And she said, watch. And she went home. She had a bath, put on perfumes, put on her finest clothes, stood erect like a lady. And she walked back to the square. She crossed the square and went into the fabric shop. And she was sat by the shopkeeper on a sofa. And she was given mint tea as he asked her what she would like to buy. And she sipped and she said, my son's girlfriend would like to make a dress. And he has asked me to buy the finest silk. So the shopkeeper bought out a different coloured silk, and she alighted on a beautiful yellow silk, a bolt that he unfolded. And she looked at it and said, that is perfect. But she didn't sound pleased. But he bowed and he measured off, as they would at that time, 3, I nearly said meters, 3 nose to hands. And he took the material and he held it before her, and her hand was shaking slightly, and a bit of mint tea slurped on the corner of the material. He said, oh, madam, I'll change. She said, no. She said, no, you change it. No, you change it. It's going to be cut up for a dress. Just wrap it for me and I will buy it. And the shopkeeper, having made a sale to what he thought might be a satisfied customer, ventured to ask why she was unhappy. She drew a breath and said, my son is seeing a married woman. Shame on our family, shame on the whole of our family. And he is not even ashamed. And he asked his mother to buy material for his woman to make a dress so they can parade themselves. And I do it because I am his mother. And she pays for the fabric. It's wrapped in tissue paper. And she leaves the square. She leaves the square and she walks down an alleyway. And then there are a row of houses. And she knocks on a blue door, the shopkeeper's home. And the door opens and she stands and says, oh, my dear, such a hot day. I wonder if I could trouble you for a glass of water. And the woman said, of course, auntie, which is a term of respect in that place. Come in, sit down. She sits her down on the sofa. And she goes into the kitchen to fetch a glass of water. And the woman slips the parcel behind a cushion. And she takes the glass of water when it arrives, and they sit and talk. But she's a fine young woman, pleasant. And in the end, she says, I must go now, but thank you so much for your glass of water and your hospitality. I enjoyed speaking to you so much. And she left, and the blue door was closed behind her. At the end of the working day, the shopkeeper closed up, a smile on his face. He was going home to his wife, something he always looked forward to every single day. And he arrived home and he went through the blue door and he could smell the tagine on the hob cooking. Another fine day. It had been a good day in the business. And he sat on the sofa and his wife brought him a cup of mint tea. And as he sat and drank, he noticed a package behind a cushion. And as he drew it out, he noticed a small spots of mint tea on the corner. This was the same package that woman had, and it was hidden behind the sofa so he wouldn't see it. And his face clouded and went red. His beautiful wife was the girlfriend of this woman's son. His beautiful wife was unfaithful to him. How could he not have known? He sprang up in a fury, marched into the kitchen, knocked the tagine off the hob, shouted at his wife, who stood tearful, incomprehending. And then he stormed upstairs. His wife cleared up the mess. Lost to know what had happened, she climbed into bed. He was asleep but tense. The next morning, she woke and she could hear him stamping around downstairs. She winced as the door slammed. Waiting in the square, standing next to Iblis, sitting on the bench again, was the old woman. And they watched him come out of the alleyway. They saw his face, his eyes red with tears, his teeth gritted. They saw him open his shop and scold his assistant for no reason at all. He almost threw his fabrics over the rail, and he stopped and he paused and he looked like a broken man. And Iblis was satisfied and impressed what the woman had done that he could not do, until she said, "Do you realize that I can turn back that broken man?" And she clicked her fingers to emphasize it. "Ha," said Iblis. Now you are bragging, for that man is a broken man. You have done what I could not do." "Well," said the woman, "how would you like a wager? How would you like to wager 10 silver coins that I can right that wrong?" Iblis liked the idea of that and took a pouch from beneath his cloak and jingled it, and therein were 10 silver coins. And the woman set off across the square and walked into the shop. And the shopkeeper was not pleased to see her, but he was too professional to show it, rather than speaking to her in a gritted teeth. "Yes, madam," he said. "And what can I do for you today?" "Oh," she said, feigning breathlessness, "you will not believe what happened to me. You will not believe what happened to me." And he stopped and he's listening now. She said, "You will not believe." She said, "I left you yesterday." She said, "And I was going home and it was just so hot. I stopped, I knocked on a blue door." I've got no idea who lives there. Knocked on a blue door and a lovely young woman took me in. She took me in, she gave me a glass of water. We talked for an hour. What a lovely woman. And I left thanking her and I headed home. When I got home, I'd left my material behind. I was too embarrassed to go back. What would she have thought, this foolish old woman? Shopkeeper's face as he realized what had happened. "I will buy some more materials," she carried on. He called his assistant. "Ahmed, give this lady whatever she wants, no charge." And he left the shop. He ran across the square, he ran down the alleyway, he went down the street and through the blue door. The door crashed open and his wife, standing in the kitchen in some trepidation, saw him come in, but he flung himself on his knees and he grabbed around the legs and he asked for her forgiveness. And she took him by the shoulders and she stood him up and said, "You foolish man," as he explained what he thought had happened. And they embraced and they were happy again. Meanwhile, the woman left the shop, and when she walked across the square, there was no one sitting on the bench. But there in the middle was a pouch with 10 silver coins, for Iblis always pays his debts. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Oh, it's lovely. You kind of
Thank
get
you.
lots of twists and turns. Huh, had such great stories tonight. Thank you so much, Keith.
Thank you.
Keith the second. Do you have another tale for her? Or you'll have to unmute. Hang on. You're still muted, Keith.
Sorry, yes, I have a poem for you
Oh, lovely.
for a change. And so Alfred Lord Tennyson was born in Lincolnshire, and he was actually born about 2 miles in his early childhood, about 2 miles from where I live. And he did, obviously, you maybe all know, but he did lots of poems and poetry, and he was very famous in his day. And he did some Lincolnshire dialect poems as well, which I'm going to be telling you sometime. But this is just a short one that I really like, and it's you probably all heard it before, but it's just something I just like to share. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out of the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out of our born of time and place the floods may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar.
Oh, that's beautiful, Keith. I haven't held any Tennyson for ages. That's really lovely. Oh, thank you. Okay. We're back to Norman. Norman, do you have another tale for us? Let me spot you.
And well, just as okay, unmute myself. I hope this doesn't reverse it. Okay.
No, I think you're good. We can hear you still.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay, this is a longer story, and I've itched to tell it on many occasions, and I just never did take the chance. So here I am.
Go for it.
Once there was a mouse king of all the mice of Japan, and they had a beautiful princess mouse for a daughter. And so far, so good, for it was the time for the young lass to be married. And as was the wisdom and practice of the day, it was the king's choice to choose a husband for his daughter. And he wanted, being king, the most powerful and most important being and person in all the world. And so he was thinking about this, and he's thinking about this, and then the sun caught his eye and realized the sun, which shines upon all of us, would be the perfect husband for his daughter. For was not the sun the most important and powerful being in all the world? And so he called all of his minister mice, and they all gathered around, and such a flurry of long, wise whiskers surrounded him. And he said, "My daughter shall marry the sun." And the ministers, who always agreed with him on everything, nodded their heads. "Your daughter should marry the sun." And the king was so proud that he burst into song. And without further ado, he went, "Without any doubt, I know what to do. I know what to do. I know what to do. Without any doubt, I know what to do. My daughter will marry the sun." And the ministers, who always agreed with them in good Gilbert and Sullivan manner, echoed back his words and sang, "His daughter shall marry the sun." And the Mouse King was so pleased that he called his daughter to him and he gave her the good news. And she said, listen to the news that she would marry the sun. Oh, father, what a wonderful thing to marry the sun that shines over all of us. And yes, indeed, Father, it is the most important and powerful being in all the world, except one thing. And what's that? Asked the Mouse King. Why, the clouds. The clouds cover the sun. And if the clouds cover the sun, doesn't that make clouds more important and more powerful than the sun? And the Mouse King thought about this for a moment, and he said, "You're right. Without any doubt, I know what to do. I know what to do. I know what to do. Without any doubt, I know what to do. My daughter shall marry a cloud, and his daughter shall marry a cloud." And in the silence that followed, little Mouse Princess was smiling. She says, "Oh, Father, indeed it would be nice to marry a cloud, for a cloud gives us the most wonderful shade from the sun. But you know, Father, the cloud turns into rain. And the rain, which gives us wonderful water to grow crops and fill our lakes and rivers and the ocean itself, doesn't that make the rain the most important and powerful than the cloud, which is more important than powerful than the sun?" And the king thought about that for a moment, and he said, "You're right. Without any doubt, I know what to do. I know what to do. I know what to do. Without any doubt, I know what to do. My daughter shall marry the rain. His daughter shall marry the rain." And the Mouse Princess says, "Oh, Father, it would be wonderful to marry the rain. As you know, it waters our crops and feels so good on a hot day. But dear Father, that rain, when it falls, soaks into the ground and disappears from sight and is not seen. And the ground swallows up the rain. And if the ground, the earth, soaks up and swallows the rain, doesn't that make the earth the most important and powerful thing in all the world? And more important and powerful than the clouds, more important and powerful than the sun? Father, doesn't that make the ground the most important and powerful being in all the world?" "You're right," said the Mouse King of Mice of all Japan. "Without any doubt, I know what to do. I know what to do. I know what to do. Without any doubt, I know what to do. My daughter shall marry the ground." And dutifully all the gray whiskered mouse sang, "His daughter shall marry the ground." And the little Mouse Princess says, "Oh, Father, indeed it would be wonderful to marry the ground, which holds us down and everything else up. But you know what? Trees grow out of the ground, and the trees grow up and up and up against the very pull of the earth itself. And if the trees grow up against the power of the earth and the ground, doesn't that make the trees more important and powerful than the ground, which is more important and powerful than the rain, which is more important and powerful than the clouds, which is more important and powerful than the Son, does not make the trees most important for and powerful things in all the world? Without any doubt, I know what to do. I know what to do. I know what to do. Without any doubt, I know what to do. My daughter shall marry the tree. Now, the most counselors were wondering where all of this was going, but dutifully they echoed back, his daughter shall marry a tree. Oh, Father, it'd be wonderful to marry a tree, and which provides again shade for us, and nuts and fruits and homes for all the creatures of the forest and the birds. But you know what? People come along and they come and cut the trees down, and they chop up the tree, cut the trees up and make houses out of the trees. And don't we, us mice, we live inside the house, and we can go anywhere we want inside the house. And does that make us more important and more powerful than the house, which is more important and powerful than the ground, which is more important and powerful than the rain, more important and powerful than the clouds, which is more important and powerful than the sun? Doesn't that make mice the most important and powerful beings in all the world, dear, dear Father? And then with a smile, the king said, you're right. And without any doubt, I know what to do. I know what to do. I know what to do. Without any doubt, I know what to do. My daughter shall marry a mouse. His daughter shall marry a mouse. Oh, Father, I'm so glad that you agree with me. For you see, I have met the most handsome Prince Mouse. He sent me some most beautiful poems written in letters, and well, he and I have fallen in love. I know we're not supposed to, but Father, once you meet him, I think you will like him. And the mouse, from behind a pillar, there came a very shy Prince Mouse, who walked over. He bowed to the Mouse King, and the Mouse King saw indeed that he was a good and handsome and kind young mouse. And so, without further ado, they got married. They had much joy in their marriage, and for the rest of their lives, they lived in the house knowing fully and full well that they were the most important and powerful beings in all the world.
Yay! I love that version of that, Norman. I've always heard it like the king kind of gets told by the different things, but I love that it is the daughter that kind of takes him on
She
that
guided
journey.
him.
Yeah, she guided because she knew what she wanted all along. It's just yeah, I love it. It's one of those stories that I kind of never quite relate to, but the way you tell that one, now that makes sense to me. I
Well,
appreciate that so much.
thank you. I developed that version when I was at the Spiral Garden, and
Okay.
and I had large groups of children in front of me, and so they were
Yeah.
the counselor mice. And to tell the truth, I miss their voice when
Yeah.
and the Gilbert and Sullivan feel when they sing back to me. But
Yeah.
so thank you very much.
Oh, it's beautiful. Loved it. Lovely. David, that brings us back to you. Do you have a myself?
Yes, I have one, and it's a personal story.
Oh, lovely.
Norman has heard this because I sent him the video.
Yes.
I was asked to tell this story at our local Testify, which is personal stories, and I think you'll enjoy it. And the title, for lack of a better term, I finally gave it a title, was Teaching the Revolution. Now, my friends, I used to teach school. Yes, I corrupted young minds. I taught in our high school, which in other countries is called secondary. I taught on the second floor of a one-story school. Now, how that works is I was in the tower room where you go up the steps and there's the tower and the main entrance. And I taught French. Now, this school district was very poor. So anything you did for the students, oh, they ate it up like candy. Anything that you did for them. For as I said, it was a very poor school district. I had 18 students in my French class. Now, besides teaching the regular conjugations, felicitations, and permutations, I also brought in culture and history. We got into the history and we came up to the French Revolution. Now, how am I going to make this much more interesting than just reading stories and accounts? So, my students and I got our heads together and we decided to reenact the Reign of Terror. What we did was everyone had the sans-culotte hat, you know, the red hats with the cane, came over to the side. One of my students, his father was a carpenter. He built a life-size model of Madame Guillotine, but with a foam board blade, spray painted to look like metal. One of my other students, well, her parents ran a dress shop and they brought mannequins dressed in their shifts. Fortunately, the mannequins had removable heads. What we did, I told the students is, now you go and tell some of your friends, and I will go and tell a few of the teachers, so they'll be in on what's going on. One of the teachers, well, actually, the principal, which is our equivalent of a headmaster, I had to let him know what was going on also. He said, okay. The day dawned. The sky was blue, beautiful clouds, light, gentle spring wind. And bring, bring, bring. Every student went into their homeroom to do their homeroom's information and news and things. And a voice came over the intercom. Will Mr. Thompson's French students please meet him in his classroom before first period? Well, they came, boogity, 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 boogie, up the stairs. I was asked, do you have your hats? Yes, we have our hats. Have you told your friends? Yes, I've told some of the teachers. So we waited. Bring, 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 first period. Down the stairs, boogity, 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 liberté, fraternité, égalité. You go this way, you go this way, I'll go this way. We went into the classrooms. We went into the principal's office. I arrested them in the name of the People's Committee for Public Safety. You are being arrested for loyalty to the regime. And he said, okay. So it was not only the principal, but also the school secretary and the guidance counselor. We led them out. Some of the students got the other teachers, and their teachers had the red hat on, and they took everyone out. All the school emptied out the front door onto the great greensward that was in front of the school with the flagpole. And then out rolled Madame Guillotine. Some of the teachers were tied to the flagpole. They didn't know what was going on. The students were like, what is this? What's happening? Some of the teachers who were in on this brought chairs and their knitting, and they sat in front of the guillotine. The parents who had mannequins, they were piled up on the platform. I walked up. We took one of the teachers from the flagpole, brought them up. By order of the Committee on Public Safety, you are to be executed for your loyalty to the regime. Vroom, picked up a dummy head. And the students started screaming, Aristo, Aristo, Aristo. Students were leaning out the windows of the school. What is, yay, yay, yay. And then it went on and on. And I tell you right now, in the very back of the crowd, you could hear people talking. Some concerned citizen had called the local police. The police parked. Here comes the Georgia State Patrol. Wheel, 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 wheel. And they parked in front of the school. You've seen films of men running out of barbershops with their bibs out and half shaven. That's what happened. Across the street from the school was a barbershop. Different merchants come out. What's going on? What's going on? And then the police and the state patrol. What? And the students were like, shh, It's okay. It's okay. And in the back of the crowd, you could hear Allons enfants de la patrie, les Jules de Guare, fou, Aristo, arrivé, contre nous de la fou, Aristo, Tyrannia, and I forget the rest of the words, but I tell you, it was grand. It was the whole morning. And when it was over with, we were hugging each other. I was so proud of my students. Oh, we had such a grand time. And school took back into session as much as it could for the rest of the day, as you know. And after the last students had left to go home in the afternoon, I was called to the principal's office. Yes, Mr. Thompson. I just had a phone call from the county school superintendent. He wants to see you in his office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. And okay, so I went home. It's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna lose my job? What is this? What can I do instead? Well, anyway, instead of business casual, which is how our teachers dressed, I was in full three-piece suit and thank you very much, a tie. I drove up and I parked in front and I went into the reception for the superintendent's office precisely at 9 a.m. Oh, yes, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Brown will see you now. So, okay. I was sweating like a stuck pig. Walked in. Mr. Brown said, have a seat. He got up and went and closed the door. Walked back, sat down behind his desk and said, I have had a few telephone calls about what happened at your school yesterday. And I have made a decision. Keep up the good work. You may leave. And that is how I taught the revolution.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, David. I wish I'd been there.
It was loads of fun. And they're still talking about it some 30 years later.
I can imagine. Do you know, it reminds me of my English teacher when we first learned Shakespeare and we were doing, I think it was Henry IV, Part 1. And when it got to the battles, he was like giving out rulers and was like up on the desks fighting people. It's like, and you never forget it, do you? It's
No, you don't.
Just amazing. Thank you. That was lovely. Do you know, we probably have time to go around again if anyone has stuff to share. Or I can tell, like, who would like to go again, I guess is the question. First, Keith. There we go. First, Keith and Norman. All right, here we go. Let me put you on spotlight. Off you go, Keith.
Okay, we're off to Italy now. We're off to the town of Cremona in northern Italy, and it's the last quarter of the 18th century. So picture, if you will, a huge cobbled square with a magnificent church at one end. On either side, there are stone arches, and above the arches are the rooms where merchants ply their trade. And it's early in the morning. It's early in the morning, and people are beginning to move around. But the quiet is broken by some wooden wheels and horses' hooves as a caravan comes into the square. And the caravan is driven by a man with a red beret, a white shirt and red trousers. And next to him is a woman with a red neckerchief, white blouse and red skirt. And they stop in the middle of the square and they start taking down their wares, pots and pans, pegs, lucky heather for over your door. And people walk past and they glance, they have a look. But no one stops until a small boy steps out of the back of the caravan onto a platform. And in his hand, he has a blue violin. He takes the bow and he starts to play. He starts to draw the bow back and forth over the strings, and the music swirls around the square and soars into the sky. And a crowd gathers listening to the music. And of course, as they gather, they begin to realize, well, I do need a new pot, and you can't have too many pegs, and it's always a good idea to have some heather over your door for good luck. And at the back of the crowd is an old man, an instrument maker. And it's a long time since he's heard a violin played so beautifully and by someone so young. Yet, in an office above the square, with the window open, sits a merchant in a long robe with a fur collar and a gold chain, and he's working with a quill on a ledger, a man whose only skill is to get people to part with their money. And hearing the music in the square, he stands up in a huff and shuts the window and carries on with his ledger. And then the rumor begins. There is a rumor spreading in the town of Cremona that the violin is magic. For whoever heard of a blue violin, and to be played so beautifully by one so young? And the people of Cremona rather like the idea of having a magic violin in their midst. So the rumor was received by all around. Now it is darkness, there's a moon lighting the square, but it's quiet. The only sound is the family sleeping in the caravan. But a figure is walking through the arches, a figure dressed in black, no long robe, no fur collar or gold chain this time. And the figure makes his way across the square, and he reaches into the caravan, and he takes the violin and the bow. No one notices. He leaves the square, climbs on his horse, and rides out of town. He rides down a track through the woods and finds himself in a clearing. He stops and dismounts and takes the violin next to his chest, as he'd seen the boy do, and he drew the bow over the strings. The sound is hideous, and he is shocked. He thinks this is a magic violin. He tries to move his fingers on the neck as he'd seen the boy do. The sound is no better. He becomes furious. And he rakes the bow back and forth over the string. The sound is horrendous. His heart is beating, his teeth are gritted, he's furious. He takes it by the neck and he smashes it against a tree and throws it into the undergrowth. And taking a moment to calm himself, he climbs back on his horse and rides out of the woods, back into the town. The next morning, the silence of the square is broken by a small boy crying, by his parents angrily packing away their wares, closing the shutters. A crowd gathers in the square. How could this happen? How could this happen in Cremona? Soon it will be news across northern Italy that Cremona is the sort of town where someone would steal a small boy's violin. You can imagine the crowd, everyone talking at once. Oh no, can you imagine the shame? What will people say? Voice over voice over voice. Until, walking through the crowd as they part, is the old man, the instrument maker, and in his hand is a violin case. He reaches the caravan and the father goes to speak, but his wife touches his arm, stilling him. And the old man opens the case, and there inside is a beautiful, shiny brown violin. And he hands the violin and the bow to the boy, and the boy sniffs back a tear and then takes the violin next to his chest. And he begins to draw the bow back and forth over the strings. And the music swirls around the square and soars into the sky. And the crowd cheer and clap with relief and appreciation. But above the square, a window slams shut. Thank you.
Thank you. That was lovely. I've got an image of the blue violin now. I have a friend that plays like a really colourful violin, but I don't think it's blue, but it's such a great thing. So.
Thank you.
Awesome. Second, Keith, do you have another one?
I can tell a story, yes, if you've got time. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got till 9 o'clock, so I think we can
Right.
fit everyone in again, can't we?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Well, I live in the Lincolnshire Wolds, which is the rolling chalk hills, and you actually see them behind me. And my all my ancestors, my grandfather and great grandfather, all lived in South Ormsby. But many years ago, before my parents and grandparents lived there was a knight, a brave knight, Sir Hugh Bard. And he looked after the people in the village, and all the people that were in his in his area. Now, up on the hill, there's a place called Wormsgate. Now, the old name for a dragon is Worm, and that place really should be called Wormsgate, because in the time of Sir Hugh Bard, there was this ferocious dragon that lived there. As tall as a house, head as big as a dustbin lid, eyes as big as saucepans, as plates, sauce plates, soup plates. A big long body shaped like a turnip, and small arms that came out the sides that ended in claws, and big strong legs, thighs. And this particular dragon has something very special, because, well, two things that are special. First of all, on its right thigh, he had a wart which was very vulnerable, so he covered it with brass plate. But now dragons, as you know, normally breathe out fire and smoke. But this particular dragon had a severe case of halitosis. And so it breathed out poisonous gas. And all the trees around would shrivel up and go brown, and all the crops, the wheat and the barley would die in the fields, and the sheep and the cattle would be dying in their meadows. And so it caused devastation throughout that part of Lincolnshire. But Sir Hugh Bard, the brave knight as he was, he decided to do something about it. And he challenged the dragon to a duel. And he mounted his white charger and his arm and his helmet. He had a sword, shield, javelin and a lance. And on the flat land, on the marshland between the Wells and the North Sea, they faced one another and started to charge towards one another. And they just got near to one another, and suddenly there was a flash of lightning, a clap of thunder, and the dragon hesitated. And Sir Hugh, he took his javelin, he threw it at the dragon, and it just glanced off his shoulder, causing it a wound which produced a lot of green blood that ran down his arm. Well, the dragon was so angry at this, and they separated out again, and they started again to charge one another towards one another, and they galloped towards one another, and they nearly met one another, and suddenly there was a flash of lightning, a clap of thunder. The dragon hesitated, and Sir Hugh, with his lance, he thrust it at the dragon, and it just caught him just under his shoulder, and damaged in his body, and this green blood started to pour out. Oh, that dragon was so angry. And they separated out, and they started again to charge towards one another, galloping towards one another, and they nearly met, when suddenly there was a flash of lightning, a clap of thunder. The dragon hesitated, and Sir Hugh, with his sword, he thrust it through the brass plate into that vulnerable spot on the dragon's side, and the dragon fell down dead with such a loud crash that the noise of it was heard all the way away at Lincoln. Now, just to be safe and to make sure that the dragon was dead, he drew with his sword, he cut off the dragon's head. Now, the king at the time was King Henry, and he was so pleased with what Sir Hugh had done. Sir Hugh Bardolph changed his name to Bardolph, Sir Hugh Bardolph, gave him the right to put a symbol of a dragon on his coat of arms, on his shield, gave him riches, and gave him the right to charge a horn of salt for every wagon load of salt that was brought across from the salt pans near Saltfleet being across the Wolds to Lincoln. Now, you may or may not believe in dragons, but if you should come to my house and we go along the road towards Louth and Grimsby, we pass through Wormsgate. And on the right-hand side, there's a burial mound covered with trees. And if we were given permission to dig into that burial mound, we'll find not only the bones of Celtic men, women and children, but we'd find the bones of the Wormsgate dragon, because that is where it's buried.
Thank you. Oh, poor dragon. Just the way it went for dragons back then.
Yeah. Just a true story from Lincolnshire.
Oh, lovely. I have a dragon from the Lyminster, Knucker. So like Knucker, another kind of old word for dragon. But I can't kill him at the end of it. I've never been able to bring myself to do it. He just kind of gets rehabilitated. Norman, do you have a tale or a song to finish us off? What do you reckon? Oh, you need to be unmuted again. Unmute yourself, my dear.
Very, 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 well, it's a short piece.
Cool.
And if I want to make it a short piece, I better tell it, shouldn't I? Indeed.
You should.
Okay. Now, so old black crow at the top of old oak tree, listening to the shepherd piping below. Sweet music, said Crow. Sweet, sweet music. When suddenly the howl of a wolf, the bleat of a lamb, and off ran the shepherd, dropping the flute. Silence. Down like a black ragged rag flew Crow beside the silver flute, eyed it with shining eye. Silence. Scratched at it with a sharp claw. More silence. pecked at it with sharp, sharp beak, and more silence that went on. And off flew Crow, thinking, isn't that like a human? Isn't that like a greedy, greedy human to take all that music and leave nothing for me? And the end of the piece. Told you it was short.
It was very short. Oh, I was kind of, but I
We
knew
hoping
that.
it would go. Yes. Well, the idea it goes. Actually, I was chosen because of the blue fiddle music.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more a story that is a short one too, but
Another
I
one.
can tell it.
Go on then.
Okay,
And I've just found a poem that I'm going to finish with. So
Okay,
you do that. You do that, and then I'll do this.
this one fits in with all the other some of the other stories. You'll figure out which one. There is a king who had 3 daughters, and the king loved wisdom. And one day it entered into his heart to go traveling to the world because wisdom is out there in the world. And so he went to his 3 daughters, and he left them each with a gift, a grain of rice. And so he said, "Take care of this, and when I come back, the one that has used your gift best will become leader after me," because he had no sons. So he went on his long journey, and after many years he came back. And while he was away, the first daughter thought, a seed, a grain of rice. Well, father must think it's very important. So she built a beautiful, magnificent shrine and put it in the middle of it, burned incense, and had priests hired to venerate it, etc. The second daughter didn't know what to do with grain of rice. I didn't know what to do with it, and so she was going past the kitchen. She just threw it to the chickens. But the third daughter, she looked at it and she thought for a long, long, long time, wondering at the meaning of her father's message. And so when the father came back and he visited his daughters in turn, the first daughter, the one who had built the magnificent cathedral for it, he said, "Well, rice is very important to people. You have honored and respected it, and you have done well." The second daughter, well, when she heard her father was coming back, she went back to the kitchen. She found a grain of rice, and then she went to her father and said, "Father, here's a grain of rice." He says, "You have done well. Rice is rice. It's humble and it's not proud. You have done well." But the third daughter said, "Father, I cannot show you the grain of rice, but I must take you to it." And she took him out into the countryside, and there in the countryside were fields upon fields and fields of rice fields ready to be harvested. And said to his daughter, "You have done very well, for you have remembered that rice needs to be respected, it needs to be humble, but you also remembered that a rice is a seed that must be planted." And so she became a wise ruler after her father, and so the story ends here. We must take our grains and our seeds and cultivate them, respect them, and honor them, and plant them.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Norman. I really want to end with this poem. So I think those who've been before know that I always kind of say one of my favorite poems is Ozymandias, and we've done that before. But this kind of like this one kind of is sort of is up there. I guess Ozymandias and this are my favorite poems. And I was thinking of this from like our first story, the story that we made together about the dinosaur and the communication. If you haven't heard this before, it's well, if you haven't heard this before, it'll be the first time for you. This is called the Loch Ness Monsters Song, and it's by Edwin Morgan. And it goes like this. Snuffle, 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 snuffle. Good job, blub, 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 blub. Dribble, flap, flap, flip, 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 flap, flip, 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 flip. Gum, graw, gruff, gruff. Off gum, graw, gum. Hovler, ploddock, doppler, doffuk, plover, cot, doppler, cotosh. Spillegro, fuck, fuck. Spillegraf, hat, scare, fuck, fuck, spiffok. The gra, crag, fuck. Gruff, gruff, gaff. Gumble. Blip, blip, blimp, 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 blip. And there ends the poem. I love it very much for reasons that are obvious. And maybe that's what our T-Rex could have done. Like dinosaur poetry. Do look it up because it's just amazing the way it's written on the page. I first had someone read it to me on a very drunken night, so I still have that image in my head, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but I do love the poem even then. So thank you so much. That is all we have time for tonight. I'm just going to see if I can find out what's the next thing. There's normally like storytelling for children on Fridays. The next one that's on the schedule here is the 27th with Despina, but I suspect there's one before that because the 27th of September seems a long way away. The next worldwide story round I've got down is Sunday the 22nd at 6 o'clock. So hopefully you guys come along with that, but please do look on the World Storytelling Cafe website to see when the next things are coming up. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Give yourselves a big round of applause.
Thanks very much, Justine. It's been a brilliant evening.
It's been so much fun, and we'll be back here with Tales and Tunes. We will be back to the first Wednesday of the month next month. Yeah, apologize for it being the second. I just had other things on the first Wednesday, but next month, so you don't have quite as long to wait. We'll be back on whatever the date the first Wednesday of the month is. Thank you so much, guys. I will see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Oh, and thanks, Waleed. Thank you for hosting us.
Yes. And Wally, hope to see you soon in next January.
Yeah, it's not a lot. I don't know if I'm going to make it this time, but I will certainly be watching you all virtually if I can't make it in person.
Mm-hmm.
See you later, guys.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.